I'll start with, for those of you who don't normally handle your own E-rate, the Learning Technology Center does offer E-rate support throughout the year, and I am the person who does that E-rate support. And this year we started calling our E-rate trainings E-rate Essentials. 2021, this year was the year of opportunities, and so I took a little turn on that here with this new funding that we have available, and so we're calling this Other Than E-rate Essentials 2021 and Beyond. So for those of you who have not met me in the past, my name is Mindy Fiscus, and I am your Digital Access Coordinator for the Learning Technology Center. I also serve as one of your 2 state E-rate coordinators and participate in a lot of different conversations in the state revolving around broadband and how K-12 plays a part in that. I'm recognizing several of your names from the chat, and I know many of you are not shy, and so there will be a lot of time here today for me sharing information with you, but I'm hoping that you don't hesitate to either unmute or throw some questions into the chat, because there are a lot of questions still unanswered with some of the things that we're going to talk about today. And it is good to make sure that we can address your needs, even if the answer is, I don't know, or we're still waiting. I will be totally upfront with you with what I think, at least. So I'm going to give you some information on the Show Me the Money situation we are looking at right now, giving you some updates on broadband funding. We're going to talk a little bit, just a few minutes, about the stuff that does exist in our state already, or we already knew about before the last, 30 days. And then mainly spend most of our time on the 2 new programs, a little bit more time on the EBB, and then most of our time on the ECF, which is the Emergency Connectivity Fund. And those are both funding sources from the FCC. And then I'm going to give you a little wrap up on how that all comes into play with all the other funding that is coming out for broadband and everything else as it relates to the stimulus funding. So right now, these are the kind of funding sources that we have been talking about for the last couple of years. Like I said, many of you do participate in the E-rate program. We are currently in processing. So you should currently at this time be looking for PIA review questions. Maybe you got a funding commitment letter already. They've been flowing out the doors. If so, and you have been funded, your next step is the 486. That is the commitment funding, the commitment form that commits to the funding and also validates that you are filtering out harmful content. So be looking for that. Typically, it is not due until 120 days after the start of service. So it's not technically due until like October-ish, but it's good to get it out of the way, especially if you're getting discounts from your provider, because they're not supposed to be giving you those discounts until you file that commitment form. So know that that is open and ready for you to file the 46. The very first checkbox on that form is a box that says I'm filing this early. So you're going to want to make sure you check it this time. That might not be something that you traditionally check if you're looking at last year's for a guide. So this is an early filing this year. If you're going to file it before July 1st, make sure you check that. Again, if you did not get discounts, you're going to be wanting to collect your money and also be thinking about, with all these other funding sources we're talking about, how to leverage E-rate. And maybe it's something you're going to push pause on for a bit on your category 2 with all the other funding sources coming your way, and maybe not. So definitely something to think about. You do have 5 years, and we are just in the first of those 5 years for that category 2 funding. The Illinois State Matching Grant, I am patiently waiting for. So I heard it was coming last week and hitting the presses last week, and now I'm hearing this week. So we are still waiting for ISB to release that fund. I know there are more than a handful of districts that are waiting for that application process so that they can get the non-discounted share of their fiber builds paid for. And so as soon as that does hit the presses, I will be sending that out to all of our various communication channels and making sure that you know it is available. I am keeping a little short list here that I've got about 10 districts on right now of who to reach out to when I see that it has been released. So if you are one of those districts that is interested in that funding, that what goes with the current E-rate cycle, we are in FY21, please do reach out to me if you want to be on that distribution list, but I will be sending it to all of the channels when we get that out. But it will cover the rest of a fiber build. For those of you who are interested in leveraging it in the future, it covers transport between buildings as well, so WAN circuits as well. So definitely something to look towards if you are interested in doing those kind of fiber build projects. We also had a great webinar with the Illinois Do It Consortium this morning. The ICN Consortium has multiple names, really. For the ICN, they are currently looking for people to sign up. So the deadline for signing up is May 31st. And they said this morning, it says for FY22, which is true, but they're really looking for anybody whose contract expires before June 30th of 2024. So they're being real proactive this year. So if you do have a contract expiring, if the consortium is something that you would like to entertain being a part of, if you are already a member and just need to update your information or whatever, know that everything is going great there with the consortium. I did schedule a couple of webinars that you'll find on our LTC site where you found the registration for this event. For the ICN consortium forms and tools walkthrough. And so I've already gotten one volunteer. I'm looking for another. People who would like to sign up for the consortium so we can do a tool together, kind of like we do for the E-rate forms. We're going to get in there and we're going to fill out that LOA and fill out the circuit information and kind of do that all together and guide you through the process and record it. So if you're interested in being one of those volunteers, do reach out and let me know, because I am looking for 2 volunteers, and thus far I only have 1 to be my sample. So we'll use a fake school if we have to. And then lastly, this last column over here on the right is Connect Illinois. So we do have an Office of Broadband in Illinois. There was state funding was given to them in the form of around $400 million. Some of that went out to build out the state network, and some of it went to other projects. Some of it's going directly to provider grants and things to build out certain areas of the state that were underserved. And part of that is community planning grants of $10,000. So they're on their second round of community planning grants. And we have roughly 6 to 8 school districts who are serving as the leads in those community planning conversations. And the way that you can use that $10,000 is real flexible. So maybe it is buying Wi-Fi hotspots and giving them out to different places of the community, or maybe it's using all of that for meeting event time and gathering people to the table. But they do offer a lot of different planning resources, but it's designed to really get your community members, not just education, but also healthcare and local businesses together to really talk about tackling the broadband needs in your community as a whole. So they also have a mapping project that's really interesting. Using some of the maps that we've had in the past and asking people to literally go out and test those spaces and kind of give some speed tests that will feed into the map, as well as making those areas of the state where they say they have connectivity at a such and such speed, you logging right in and saying, look, you might think we have a gig, but we really have 100 meg. And so really trying to come up with some more accurate maps. So that's pretty exciting. And also they're working with PCs for people. So they're taking refurbished computers and wanting to get them out into homes of those with need. So they can take those refurbished computers and recycle them back into the community. So some cool things going on with our general regular funding sources here in Illinois. And I'm pausing. And I don't see anything in the chat yet. Nothing's flashing at me from the top bar. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, the new funding source, is the emergency broadband benefit. Hopefully this isn't the first time that you have heard of EBB. We have been sending things out the last month or so. It is the first of the 2 new FCC programs, and it is providing internet discounts for homes. It is not specific just to education. It is for any available person in need, but education, National School Lunch Program is one of the qualifiers. So school districts are really kind of being tapped to help spread the word, and in particular to those students that you have that are eligible for free and reduced lunch. In addition, I know there are a couple of you at least on the call that are a CEP school. So you have that community eligibility option. Where even before the pandemic, everybody got free lunch. Every student who attends a CEP school counts to this EBB program. And so what this program will do is it will give you a $50 a month credit on your internet access. So you can go out to the providers, and there is a list of providers. So you can go out to the provider list and see if your provider is listed. If you don't currently have access, you can find a new provider and pick and choose from the list that is there. Contact that provider and tell them that you would like to leverage EBB. They will either direct you to the FCC's page, which is Get Emergency Broadband, I think it is, getemergencybroadband.com. So they will either direct you to that page, or they will take your information themselves and self register you there at the provider. And you'll get $50 a month access. And if you need a device at that household, they can also bundle in a device up to $100. So there is like a copay on that device, somewhere between $10 to $50 that the individual would have to pay. But some of the providers are also offering devices as part of the process. So let's see here, trying to see, how do I look at that Q&A? Be great. Hold on, let me go out of full screen for a minute and see if I can see the questions and answers. On Q&A now and see if I can see it. Okay, so with EBB, if a family already has access, can they still leverage EBB? My understanding is yes. So it does not have to be a new account. If that family qualifies, and Steve happens to be a district that is CEP, so any of the schools that are, or any of the kids, any of the homes that have children in your district could go to this EBB page and get that $50 credit. Pretty exciting for Murfreesboro, really. And there are several CEP schools across the state that could leverage that. In particular, though, for the ones that that maybe have the Lifeline access, like that $10 package, it does include employees as well, I believe. So but the employees might have to, employees of a CEP, that's a great question, Lisa. So employees of a CEP school might have to prove a poverty level of one of the other ways. So there is some of the other ways that you can prove poverty are like eligible for SNAP or something like that. I am not positive about that. Yes, if they were in the poverty ratings that were provided there. That's tricky. Try it and let me know. So Lisa, find a district employee and try it and see. I know if you have a student, you can say, hey, my student is eligible for CEP, and you mark that, and then it makes you choose your district from the list. At least that's what it looks like on the federal application page. But again, talk to your providers and see, and definitely let me know, because I'm real curious with that. I hadn't thought of it from the perspective of the teacher. So good to know. It's definitely good to think about. Here are some of the other eligibility things that are on there. So if a home qualifies for SNAP or Medicaid or one of those, obviously National School Lunch Program, including CEP I mentioned, but also our college students. So if you have college students in the home that get Pell Grants, those homes also, that is also a qualifier. And I don't think we have any tribal program eligibility things going on in our state, but I just might not know about it. So again, there was another caveat there. If you had a substantial loss of income due to COVID, that is also a qualifier. Now, I don't know how you would demonstrate that. You might have to jump through a couple more hoops for that, but there is that as a disclaimer as well. The program opened on May 12th. This morning, they sent out a notification that said they already have over 1 million homes signed up. So that's fantastic news. There is $3.2 billion in the fund. And at that $50 times 1 million, so we are already at $50 million if you look at it that way. And that is just the first week of the program. So it is open, it is available. There is a provider list by state that you can take a look at and see the providers in our state. Many of them are there. I was really pleased to see a lot of our local cooperative providers on the list as well, not just our bigwigs across the state and our national providers, but some of our smaller cooperatives for certain counties of the state. And if you click on getemergencybroadband.org, and I'm going to do that for you. I'm going to click off on the questions so that they go off of my list. It is pretty clear, pretty nice, succinct page from USAC here that talks about what the program is in plain English, and then does kind of walk you through, if you're qualified, how to apply and what necessary documents you might need, and finding a provider. And it kind of walks you through the process pretty clearly. I know that they've already had a couple of school districts reach out to me trying to get the information out to their homes that would be eligible. And so getting some questions back. If you have questions that you can't answer, please feel free to reach out to the USAC. There is a phone number on the contact us link there, but you can also reach out to me and I can work my channels and see if we can find information on that. Before I move on to the next program, I'm going to check the chat here. Oh, that's a good point, Katie. You know what? I will try to find some social media posts. I know that we did a blog on the LTC. So if you go to the LTC Illinois page and in the upper right-hand corner, you click on blog. There was a blog about what we're about to talk about and also about EBB. So that might be good. I will look and see what I can find and try to retweet some things or share some things on our website. And I'll put some media outreach things that you guys can use to get the word out about EBB and link to those on the website. I'll try to get those added here in the next couple of days. So great idea, Katie. So moving forward, this is when I'm going to tell you that this information is Mindy's thoughts and opinions. I have done a lot of research. I've sat in a lot of meetings. I have read a lot of pre-orders, post-orders, and commentary. I feel like I have a pretty good handle on this new fund that I am about to share with you. However, proceed with caution because we are still waiting for some definitions and some clarity and the process itself to be released by USAC. And so anything that USAC, if I call something a 471R for revised and they come out and they call it the 571, they of course win. So local USAC opinions and thoughts and training is going to trump mine. When they do come out with their opinions and thoughts and training, I will recycle it back into this and have additional webinars. I intend to fully support this program just like I do the Erate program, and if they're and actually offer virtual trainings where we can walk through the forms together. And so we are going to be as hands-on as possible as we can with this program, specifically for schools. So this new fund is called the Emergency Connectivity Fund, or ECF. Its report and order was released in March of 2021. So we did just see that. It's part of the American Recovery Act in March of 2021, and it was just released in May. So we have, it's new, hot off the presses. May 10th, it was announced that it was official and in the registration. And we have been looking and combing through that 100-page document and trying to get all the wonderful bits and pieces out for you today. There is $7.1 billion, and it is for home access to support remote learning / the homework gap. So it is for remote learning purposes and also will, as a side effect, obviously help with our homework gap situation, which means we have students at home who did not have devices and connectivity to follow along with the rest of their class in homework. They, in the last year, have not been able to follow along with their rest of their class in remote learning. So it is addressing that specific situation, and it is for home access. It is not for campus use, but it is allowable for shared facilities. So if you, it's going to be open to schools and libraries, but if you have a local community center, after school program, church that you're working with that is serving the needs of the students in your random crazy schedules that you've had this year to help with remote learning and provide access to those who have not had it, you can, as a school district, adopt them and apply for services for them as well. So they are considered a home in this program from what we are being told. So please know that they cannot apply on their own, but they can apply through you, the school, or library. Again, it is for home access. So it is not, as some people have been sharing in the rumors, about your network equipment or your devices to have on campus or anything like that. It is solely focused for remote learning. Obviously, if you get devices for remote learning and they're carrying them back and forth as a one-to-one, that yes, they are not prohibited from using them on campus, but that is not the design, is not to replace your one-to-one rollout for this upcoming year. It is to focus on the needs for remote learning. It will be managed by USAC, the same company that manages Lifeline, EBB, and Erate. So it is a familiar company and maybe a familiar process. So it is intended for unmet need. I'm waiting for a clearer definition of unmet need, and that may be something that we are all waiting for some time. So I'm going to define for you the best way that I can describe unmet need. According to what I am reading, it sounds as if they are going to want a baseline data information. So they know that a lot of work has been done in the last year to address remote learning. So they are probably going to ask you in some kind of USAC legal speak, how many kids could not participate in remote learning in your district when we started this whole process in March of 2020? Maybe that was all your students, maybe it was 80%, but kind of dial back and see what kind of evidence do you have from back in March of 2020 that you could or could not move forward with remote learning at that point. They're going to want to know how many could not connect then. And then they know you have put in a lot of local and federal resources between now and then to address this need, but they're asking you now how many are left that cannot connect. So some of you might be saying, oh, I can designate which grades we haven't been able to give devices to. That's great. That might be an unmet need. Some of you might be saying, hey, we rolled a bunch of CARES funding and a bunch of Recovery Act funding, and we applied for the digital equity grants that were offered to us, and we threw all this funding at this, and we're sitting pretty with devices, but we still have some kids that don't have connectivity at home. And maybe that's your unmet need, is those handful of kids that don't have connectivity at home. So the unmet need is going to be different from district to district. You are going to have to describe to them how you came up with that conclusion. So whether that is home surveys that you did, whether you asked on the intake of your kids with registration, I do or don't have connectivity at home, whether it's the number of Wi-Fi access points that you currently have deployed and yet you don't have enough, and the request outweigh the access that you have, those are the kinds of things that you're going to want to collect. You might choose to go out and do some kind of new survey here at the end of the school year and say, hey, who still doesn't have connectivity at home? You could target that EBB towards it, and then who's left. So again, unmet need, and it is going to probably be defined by you, the districts, and you're going to have to back up your definition with some documentation. So I think that's going to be the biggest challenge moving forward. And we'll watch and we'll see if USAC comes out with a better way of defining unmet need for us so that we get like a specific on that. But it sounds like it's going to be kind of up to the school districts to be able to demonstrate what that need is. This program for the unmet need is covering 100% reimbursement. So unlike our E-rate program, this program covers all the cost. There is no buy-in from the school district side. So it does not matter how rich or poor your school district does. In this first round of funding, it is all 100%. It's actually going to be 100% all the way around, but poverty level really doesn't come into play with this initial request. There are going to be some things that are eligible and some things that are not eligible. So eligible equipment looks like Wi-Fi hotspots, not cell phones. They specifically said cell phones could not be used as a hotspot. It has to be the hotspot devices from your wireless carriers. Modems, routers, devices that combine modems and routers, air cards or similar devices, and connected devices. And by connected, that doesn't mean that it has to have the LTE built in, though those are eligible. It means that they can connect through Wi-Fi. So your Chromebooks, your laptops, whatever you're using at your district, would be an understandable connected device to apply for here if you need them. There is a $400 cap on the devices. So if you are purchasing something for your district at $400 or less, that will be eligible for the program. If it's more than $400, you can still apply for it, but you will be capped at $400. So the rest of the cost you would have to cover yourself. There's also a $250 cap on those Wi-Fi hotspots. I know some of you have been getting those Wi-Fi hotspots for free or for $1 or whatever it is that the cellular provider was trying to do for you at the beginning of this pandemic. So you're probably going to need to cycle back to T-Mobile, Verizon, whoever it was that you worked with AT&T to find out what is the value of that device and how many devices, how much is the device you're going to need. Again, there's a $250 cap on those. The warranty is only eligible if it is bundled in the cost. I just got off a call where we were talking about maybe like the management piece. So if you bought a Chromebook and the management was built in, would that count? So from what it reads, letter of the law, is if it is bundled in the amount, it will be eligible. So if it is a $400 Chromebook, or let's do 300 because then it's under the cap, $300 Chromebook, in it is the management piece from Google, and in it is a 3-year warranty, and it comes across, the invoice is going to show up from whoever that is as $300, it would all be eligible. But if the bid and or invoice is going to come broken down and say it is $270 for the device and another $30 for the management, that's not going to be eligible. So you really need to have some communication with your provider on those devices to see how that's going to be billed out, because like we do in E-rate, they're going to have to match up the bill to the bid. So know that moving forward. Again, USAC has final say on reasonable cost. Reasonable cost is another term that we haven't clearly defined. And so USAC will say, hey, wait a second, why is Steve Carrington's device twice as much as Katie Monroe's? And they may come back and ask you. Hopefully that's not the case, Steve and Katie. Anyway, eligible services, any kind of internet for those devices. So commercially available internet, fixed or mobile. So your cable providers, your cellular providers are all in the mix here. There is some conversation about satellite providers. I personally feel like a satellite provider, whether that's HughesNet or whether that's Starlink from Elon Musk, should be an eligible service here. I realize that there's an increased cost. And so I would say if you have to lean towards one of those kinds of services, please be able to document that your fixed or mobile providers could not reach that address. So again, the priority is getting internet to people, but be able to back yourself up and show why you chose that more expensive option over one of these other standard options for those houses. Again, I don't know if I said this explicitly, so I will now. This is for teachers and students. So this is all staff members, all students in your building. It really is for everyone. So you don't have to say, hey, this is just, you know, those NSLP or anything like that. It's any student. So it could be a student of yours who is not NSLP that lives on a wealthy farm, but there is no access there and nobody's bringing it to them and no cell signal. And this program is still for them. There are no minimum standards on the computers, but they must be able to do remote learning as you were introducing it in your district. So it is to be on same standard as you have with your other devices. The one restriction here really is that one Wi-Fi hotspot per user, or one fixed internet connection per location. So if you've got 2 or 3 kids that are at the same address, you really should try to see if you could get that fixed solution for them and have one for the address. If not, then you could look at having one Wi-Fi hotspot per child. So that was one of the designations they made. New construction of networks, they didn't say it's absolutely not allowed, but they basically said in my translation, it's going to be difficult to get and you're going to have to jump through a bunch of hoops. So you're going to have to show that there is no access from your cellular carriers, from your fixed carriers, or from your satellite carriers if you're in to build to get there, that there is no access that is there. So it's going to be harder to prove, and but they didn't flat out say no, but it is going to be something that we are going to have to really be able to demonstrate. Okay, again, I have to, sorry about this. I did say staff also. So yes, I said students and staff. Sorry, the Q&A makes me go out of full screen. I'm not sure what that all is about. Difficulty of Zoom. So again, the new construction is a hard thing to deal with. I really advocated. As a matter of fact, I turned in some comments to the original proposal from the Learning Technology Center and posted those with the FCC. And I really advocated for those of you who are looking to expand your district networks using your own LTE equipment, and said that I really felt like that should be an eligible expense. And oh, while we're at it, take the cost allocation requirement on E-rate, where you have to take that percentage off of your bill before you submit it to E-rate, and do away with that as well. We were cited in the order where it said, a lot of people asked for that, including Learning Technology Center of Illinois. And then they both, but it basically said, though we like the way you're thinking, we're not going to pay for it with these funds. So that might open a door for the future, but please know we are still shooting for some lesser regulations on those kind of sharing your districts out, internet out past the boundaries of your district. Please know This is not E-rate. So for those of you who have been on webinars or been hearing from people that this is E-rate or E-rate adjacent, E-rate like would be as far as I would say with that. It is not E-rate. It is for the homes, where E-rate is totally for the schools. And that is a really, really strong rule on when it comes to E-rate. So it will maybe leverage some of the E-rate applications and forms. So we will not have a 470 with this form. That won't exist. The procurement is all done locally. You have to follow your own local rules, but there'll be no 28-day waiting period. It will not look like the 471, though they are tweaking the 471 in order to use it for this program. So it may still be called the 471. The only forms that we know will look pretty much the same are going to be the invoicing forms. So we expect the BEAR or the SPY forms to look really a lot like the E-rate program. I know there are a couple questions. I'll get to you guys in a second. There will be at least 2 rounds of funding. The first round of funding will cover forward expenses. So that is July 1st of 2021 till June 30th of 2022. What this means is if you are getting ready to purchase something to help with home access and close your homework gap or your remote learning needs, push pause for a minute. I think go ahead and search out those products and find out what you want to buy, but do not sign a purchase order at this time. Expenses July 1st through June 30th are all that is going to be covered in this first round. The second round will be for reimbursing things up until June 30th of 2021. So if you were getting ready to purchase on something, I would suggest you pause and have that purchase be in the first round. If you already have a PO out there, I don't know that I would stop and cancel anything quite yet, but do know that you might want to cycle back to that provider and say, hold on a second, we might be leveraging these ECF funds. They may come out from USAC and say, hey, any purchase orders that were done after April 1st, that's rumor. Again, don't quote me on that. They may come back and do some backdated purchase orders for here right in this spring. But I would just push pause and wait and see what USAC has to say about those specific dates. But as written in the order, it is July 1st expenses moving forward. The first round will be entirely funded before they offer the second round. And both rounds will last only 45 days. So they will announce an opening. Some people are saying the end of June. Some people are saying into July, but they will announce the opening of the window and school districts will have only 45 days to come in and say, this is what I want. I would expect the same kind of detail as you are seeing in our 471. So make and model numbers and dollar amounts will be required. You will have 45 days to ask for that funding, and they will, just like they do E-rate, start processing those funds as soon as they get in. The requirements, I believe it is to pay you within 60 days of invoicing. So it's a really quick turnaround, but so get your ducks in order. Just don't let the ducks out of the gate yet. These funds cannot be used if other COVID relief funding was already used. So you cannot play the shell game and say, oh, wait, I paid for that with CARES 1. What if I change my books to say it was local and then reimburse me? That's not really legit, and you should not be doing it. Do I know that some people may try to work on that? Maybe. But I think the timing of this is specific, July 1st of 2021, to make sure that you don't play those kinds of games. Would those expenses be eligible in the second round? Absolutely, but only if those expenses came from local funding sources, not from federal COVID relief funds. So they were very specific about that in the order. This is supposed to be what's left, not what you did in April of 2020. There is no extra competitive bidding requirement, as I said, just your local and state policies. Some of you have local policies that say if it's over a certain amount, you have to have more than 3 bids. You are welcome to use ILTPP and their bidding services if you need to. That is acceptable to use group purchasing and cooperative purchasing orders. So you can use those if you'd like to. The funding can be used for school buses and bookmobiles. So that is a way that we are reaching our students for the homework gap and for remote learning, and it was called out specifically. So if that is something that you are doing, or if that is something that you would like to start doing, funding can be used for school buses and bookmobiles out of this fund, not out of E-rate, but out of this fund. SAM's registration numbers are required. Lucky for you, in Illinois, we already require our public school districts to have SAM's registration numbers. That was part of our GATA process. So please talk to somebody in your administration and bookkeeping. There should already be a number. If there is not, ISB has a nice little PDF that walks you through how to get one, and I would be happy to help you with that as well. And again, the forms that for E-rate that I do believe we will see in their entirety is the BEAR 472 for invoicing or the SPY 473. You have to agree with your provider in what invoicing you're going to do. So there's no more of this get the bill and then haggle and am I paying it or are you paying it? It's a 100% program. So either the school district pays it and files for reimbursement or the provider bills the federal government directly for the entire amount. So there's no like portions or anything like that. Decide up front who is going to pay the bill and who is going to ask for reimbursement from the feds. Let me go to the Q&A here. I did say for staff. So, okay, so you have an outstanding purchase order for 450 Chromebooks, and they won't be shipped until after July. It would be ECF eligible, I believe, if it's for remote learning and it is for your unmet need population. So read between the lines there. It would be eligible if it is for your unmet need. However, please pause on that and call whoever you have ordered those 450 Chromebooks from. It depending on when you turned in that purchase order, it might not be in alignment. The purchase was made before July 1st, so you just want to make sure your paperwork checks out. In other words, if it works out for you and it is for your unmet need and that all, and when USAC comes out with their clarifications and they say, we don't care when your purchase order is, as long as the purchase was made after July 1st, the delivery was after July 1st, you might be good to go. But they might say April 1st, and then you're going to need to pull those documents out and see when they were dated, and maybe reissue them if that works for you. No, I think that do you guys have the ability to, whoops, I don't mean to cancel. I'm answering everything live to the best of my ability, and I have to click multiple things to tell you I did. Okay. So I don't know if you guys are muted or if you just like to type and watch me tap dance, but you are welcome to go unmute if you can. Maybe you can't. Disadvantage of not having Brian with me to tell me. So again, round one, expect similar detail to the E-rate 471. You are going to be asked again, what is your unmet need? And how did you determine it? Be prepared to answer, what does your procurement process look like? What are your local or state restrictions and did you follow them? How are you planning to track the devices or connectivity use? AKA, how are you keeping, you don't have to give them the exact locations because that is that was a big thing in the responses about privacy of student data, et cetera. Like, I don't think you have to give them the address of where things are located, but how are you planning to track the address of where those things are located? And how are you going to meet SIPA requirements? SIPA is still a requirement out of purchases of this fund. There's something a little up in the air, like, do we have to filter the internet? Do we have to filter the device? Do we have to do both? What if the device is a school-owned device and it's just the internet? Do we still have to do it? What if it is the device from here, but they already have their internet? Do we still have to do it? So we're waiting for those definitions, but please know that SIPA is still required. So please be able to answer that. Whether that is something that you're, somebody told me last week, I can't remember if it was AT&T or Verizon, but they said, hey, these hotspots are SIPA compliant. Okay, that internet is SIPA compliant. That's how you prove that. Somebody else said, hey, we're using like a GoGuardian on our machines. That will allow us to do filtering. Another school district said, hey, we're doing like a VPN tunnel. So all of our devices tunnel back to our school district and go through our filtering before they can get on the internet. That would be filtering as well. So be able to describe what that looks like. They are not going to define what you have and can't, what you need to do, but you are going to have to be able to describe on all of these details what it is that you are doing. When we get to round two, so when we get to the reimbursement round, that is when we do the previous expenses, when we start to do the reimbursement of expenses. It is expected the majority of funding will be funded in the first round proactively. They do have a little disclaimer in the order to say, If the funds are deplenished to such a level and we still have requests in that first round, like, or if we think we didn't get enough requests in that first round, we could have a couple of rounds of that proactive future spending if we want to. But when we think that we've done and handled all of the future expenses, we're going to do round two, and round two is going to be reimbursement. They are expecting at some point that they will run out of money. So when that happens and the funding does run short, they are going to go to the poorest districts first. This should look similar to those of you who work with E-rate. So if you are 75 to 100% free and reduced lunch, you are top of the list for funding. That would be the 95%. So notice here, this looks a little different than your regular matrix for E-rate because you got a 5% bump for everybody who is rural. So they're going to start at the 95, which is rural, 75 to 100% free and reduced lunch. And then they're going to go down to the 90, which is urban. So urban poorness, it comes after rural poorness. They will be able to dictate down to the specifics. So they might end and say, we are out of money at 63% free and reduced lunch. And then they may say, but 63% of the urban or 63% of the rural, who knows? So, but they will work down their funding from the poorest rural to the poorest urban and then back and forth until the funding is gone in round two. Somebody please give me in the chat or in the Q&A if this makes sense to you or if I should clarify it more. You will not be responsible for paying any portion. This isn't a discount like E-rate. This is 100% reimbursement. This is just prioritizing who will get paid first. I'm not seeing any questions or comments. I'm going to think that this makes sense. Somebody in my question is saying, hopefully they're saying yes, Mindy. Yes, Steve Carrington. Great question. Private schools, charter schools, and all libraries are eligible. As a matter of fact, the more that I think about it, the more I think this is going to have a huge impact on those private schools because those private schools didn't get to tap into all the available funding that public schools did. So if you are a community that has a private school that is trying to keep up with the public school and just has not had the funding, please point them in the direction of this fund. Anybody that is currently eligible for E-rate can apply for this program. It does not matter if you have been applying for E-rate. It only matters that you are deemed a school or library by state definition. So even if you have a private school who hasn't applied in the last few years, as long as they can call USAC and get a billed entity number, they can participate in this program as well. Great question. If you have additional questions that come up along the way when you're talking to other people, you are welcome to reach out to me, but I would rather you reach out to our community. So I would rather you go to the community page at the LTC. So it is community.ltc.org, and you sign up for our community and the E-rate group. I realize that this is not E-rate, but it is, of course, E-rate-like. And so that's where most of those conversations are going to take place. But because if you're asking a question, it is more than likely that your question and answer will benefit others. I would really like to start recording this in the community. I think the community is a better source than having some kind of a Q&A on our website. I will do that if we need to, but I really think that the communication back and forth or even clarification of, wait, what do you mean? What does that look like? Happening between some of you would really add to the benefit of having these questions and answers. So please do go to the community, ask your questions. Sometimes you'll find if you send me a question directly that I may go populate it to the community as well. Again, I think rather than answering the same question 100 times from my email, I would rather have a resource that you guys can go to and see some of this Q&A and not have to wait for me to get back to you. There are lots of other buckets of funding that are out there right now, and I would be remiss if I did not point that out to you. So we have seen CARES 1. So CARES 1 is a funding package that you all got, public schools primarily, that went out to public schools in a formula funding that you solved for this school year at the beginning of the year. More than likely, a lot of that money was spent on hand sanitizer and plexiglass, in addition to some of you buying devices, et cetera. In addition to CARES 1, there was a set aside for the State Board of Education that they did not keep, that they put into a digital equity grant that was in IWAS. And again, another funding formula piece went out to everyone that was 70% of our state funding matrix or lower. So if you were, or higher, right? If you were 70% or higher need, then you got funding for this. I think that's right. I might have that backwards. Anyway, there was another digital equity grant for those of you who were poor that was dedicated to devices and connectivity. If you spent your money in CARES 1 on devices and connectivity from those sources, you can't double dip and get that money from here, right? So that money was spent in CARES 1. My understanding is the end of expenses for those funds is June 30th of 2021. So right now, you are trying to spend the remaining of that CARES fund. It might stretch to September because it is federal funding for allowable expenses, but most people try to stay on the normal calendar year. And so that money has probably already been spent. In the meantime, you got another bucket of funding, which is another funding formula, all of this based on your title funding that said, hey, here is the COVID relief package. Some people are referring to it as CARES 2. The CARES 2 or COVID relief package was signed into law in December, and that is the second bucket of funding. It was 4 times the first. And you are being asked right now by ISB to budget that money and say how you are going to spend it. Some school districts have completed those budgets and have started spending money. Some school districts are still filling out the budget paperwork. It will last you until June 30th of 2024. But in the meantime, the federal government said that really wasn't enough to repair learning loss and really get school districts where they should be. And so let's give them another bucket of funding in the American Rescue Plan. These 2 sources that we just talked about came from these later funding packages. This money is going to be 9 times what your first money was. So if you are a school district who received around $100,000 from that first formula, you are now looking to spend $400,000. And in a short matter of time, after July 1st, probably August, September, you will be asked, how are you going to spend $900,000? So know that there is a lot of other money coming your way. In other words, if the funding sources that I'm sharing with you today are not going to meet your needs, these other funding sources might, but you as technology advocates for your school district need to make sure you're a part of those conversations. Yes, this money can be used for a lot of things, and maybe you need new sanitizing equipment or new ventilation systems in your district, some things that really cost a lot of money, new programs for or software or online services or virtual learning options or STEM things. Yes, all of those things are eligible for all of this funding, but please make sure that your individual student remote learning needs have been met, either through the funding sources that I shared with you today or for these upcoming funding sources that will be available to you. This really does take a conversation. And for those of you who are a superintendent / principal / tech director / curriculum coordinator who are wearing multiple hats, I feel for you. Please know that we are here to support you at the LTC and talk to you about how these funds can be used. And there are other organizations within our state and nation, like the Principals Association and Administrators Association and School Boards Associations, CCSSO and all of them, that are working together to really help you spend this money in the best way. Somebody said to me last week, wow, be nice if we still had tech plans. And I think I might want to capture that and populate it onto my website as the person who used to listen to you all complain about tech planning. However, there is a lot of funding out there available for you. The good news is that it's really going to help students. I'm going to open it up for additional questions and answers. Again, I have been trying to track them along the way. Let me get out of my full screen. Sorry about the screen jumping around. You can see here, hopefully my little window of video is not in your way. My email address is mfiscus@ltcillinois.org. Again, I really encourage you to use the community so that we can all see that exchange back and forth with your questions. No question is a bad question with this program. You can visit our website at ltcillinois.org, and we also have a specific page for E-rate and connectivity. So let me go ahead and click on the LTC Illinois page and show you where to find the resources if you need to go share these with others. So you're going to go to Services and Connectivity and E-rate. Again, if you're looking for the community, it's right up here. We've also done a blog on EBB and ECF in regular language, English language, if you need those. But Services and E-rate and Connectivity will take you to the page that I am in charge of. We have been sharing the blogs right here. We also have today's webinar, but 2 more scheduled if you need to attend another one. I will be posting the recordings for these right underneath. So once the recording has rendered, we'll place it here. And here is just some basic information about E-rate, EBB, and ECF right here on the page for you. And then some additional resources and things along the way. So I will reflect upon the things you guys have asked for today and try to incorporate those into the page. We will be updating here again when the process is released and when the window is released and we start filling out the applications. We will have virtual support trainings like we had for our E-rate this year. It's just going to be too short of a timeline for me to fly around the state to all of those 8 spots, even though we could probably do face-to-face at this point. But I am going to do those remotely and offer several sessions where we can gather and fill out those forms together if you need that help. Again, haven't seen the forms, still waiting for them. And when those windows are announced and when those deadlines are announced, I will make sure I put those on the page. It looks like I haven't seen any more activity in the Q&A in the chat, but I will hang out here for a little bit for those of you who do have questions. And again, you can find the recording on the page. Again, exciting opportunity. So I look forward to all of us navigating it together. Thanks for joining me this afternoon and have a great rest of your week.